for quietly changing my trip plans after my family insisted on coming along? I am 32 years old. My name is Sarah Thompson and I work as a marketing manager at a mid-sized tech company in Chicago. I live alone in a simple rented condo. I drive an older but reliable Toyota Camry, and I have spent almost a decade financing my family's vacations. It wasn't that I was swimming in money, I was just consistent, organized, and since I never spent on myself, I always ended up being able to afford it. Over the years, that became a custom. On every trip, between extra rooms, meals, rental cars, and tours, I would spend thousands of dollars, sometimes 3, 4, or even more. And I acted like it didn't matter. It all started when my parents, Laura and Robert, retired early at 58. They had some savings, but they always said their Social Security and small pension weren't enough for luxuries like traveling. My sister Jessica is 6 years older than me. She is married to David, and they have 2 children, Thomas, 12, and Emily, 10. They own a small graphic design business that Jessica boasts is doing very well. Only she curiously always seemed to have cash flow problems whenever she needed to ask me for money. The first time it was my mom who called. "Sarah, honey, we heard you're going to Hawaii next month. Your dad and I, well, we would love to go." She paused for a long time. That pause that doesn't ask, just waits. "But you know, we can't afford it." I didn't think about it. I said I would pay. I convinced myself it was a one-time thing just so they could treat themselves. But it was not a one-time thing. After that, every vacation I mentioned turned into our vacation. My parents no longer asked if they could go, they took it for granted. And then Jessica started tagging along with her family. "It would do the kids so much good to see the ocean," she would say. "David needs a break from the stress." And without realizing it, I was once again the one ending up paying for extra hotel rooms, meals, tours, and whims. The worst part is that I didn't even rest. My vacations became an extra shift, only in a swimsuit. I ended up watching Thomas and Emily because Jessica and David would go off for a while to have dinner alone or accompany my parents on some errand they conveniently scheduled since we're already here. As if I had traveled to be a chauffeur and an assistant. Jessica always said she was going to pay me back. Always. Her eternal excuse was, "I swear, as soon as the business picks up a little." Last year I returned from a horrible trip to a cabin in the Smoky Mountains. In theory it was a break, but I spent more time locked in the cabin because my dad wanted to watch the Weather Channel and my mom insisted on visiting little shops to buy souvenirs. I walked behind them carrying bags as if I were an employee. That day on the drive back, with a headache that wouldn't go away, I thought, enough. That's it. I need a vacation from my vacation. Something for me, something peaceful. My friend Jennifer works as a travel agent in an office in Lincoln Park. When I arrived, I didn't even have to say much. She saw my face and said, "You look exhausted." I let myself fall into the chair in front of her desk and nodded. "I am. I need to rest for real. I want to go away for 2 weeks to a quiet place. Alone." Jennifer raised her eyebrows as if I had just said something forbidden. Then she smiled. "That sounds perfect. Let's see budget dates." She typed quickly and turned the screen toward me. "The Florida Keys." I made a face. "Isn't it packed with people?" "Not all of it." Jennifer zoomed in on the image. "Look at this hotel. It's tiny with just a few rooms. It's secluded with access to an almost private little beach, with nature trails nearby. It's for people who want silence, not for those who want nightclubs." In the photo I saw a simple but pretty white building surrounded by green, and in the background the sea peeked out. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clean emotion, like when an idea lights you up inside. "I'll take it," I said without thinking. That same night I bought the flight and reserved the room for 2 weeks, starting May 15th. Between the flight, hotel, and transfers it wasn't cheap. It was going to cost me a hefty amount, the kind that makes you think about it. But for the first time the expense was for me, not to support anyone. For the first time in a very long time, I was not preparing to endure a trip. I was preparing to enjoy it. Then came the dilemma. Do I tell them or not? Part of me wanted to disappear for 2 weeks without warning, but that also seemed immature to me. They are my family. They would have to understand, right? Adults take vacations alone. It is not a crime. The opportunity arrived the following Saturday. It was early April and there was a little over a month left until the trip. At the usual family lunch at my parents' house in Naperville, Jessica, David, and the kids were already there when I arrived. The house smelled of the pot roast my mom used to make. That smell that normally embraced me. That afternoon it squeezed me. I had braved the brutal Saturday traffic to get there and arrived tired. Even so, I sat down, smiled, and tried to follow the routine. We settled at the table. My mom started with her complaints about the neighbors and their new deck. My dad talked about golf as if it were world news. Jessica mentioned something about Thomas's science project, the usual conversation. The same loop. I waited for a gap and took a deep breath. I already booked my vacation for next month, I announced. I'm going to the Florida Keys. 5 pairs of eyes locked on me. The Keys, my mom repeated. For a second she sounded happy. Oh, how nice. My dad smiled. And when are we going? I looked down at my plate, gathering courage. I'm going alone. Silence fell as if someone had turned off the light. It was not a calm silence. It was a silence that judged. Alone, my dad said. His fork hit the plate with a dry noise. What do you mean, alone? Yes, just me. I need time for myself. The hotel is small, it's quiet. I want to rest. My mom's face hardened. One of those times her expression changes as if her heart closed. What gives you the right to plan to go alone without your family? I froze. What gives me the right? Mom, I'm 32 years old. I decide. How selfish, she murmured quietly but with venom. With everything we've done for you. My dad leaned toward me. We haven't gone anywhere in a year, Sarah. You know we can't afford it. You have to take us. I have to. I repeated, and my voice came out louder than I wanted. Jessica jumped in abruptly as if she were waiting for her turn. It's the perfect moment. David and I can ask for 2 weeks off. The kids are going to be so happy. Besides, you already know what traveling as a family is like. I looked at them one by one. It was as if they hadn't heard anything I said, as if I'm going alone was a minor detail, something they could ignore because it didn't suit them. I stood up. The chair scraped the floor and the sound gave me a little strength. I already decided. I am going alone because it is what I want and what I need. My mom put her hand to her chest. My heart, she said, her voice breaking on purpose. You're going to make me sick with this. This stress is killing me. And she started crying loudly, as if someone had offended her in public. What kind of daughter leaves her parents stranded? She moaned. Is this how you repay us? What are your aunts and uncles going to say when they find out? My dad pointed his finger at me. You are distancing yourself from this family. After everything we sacrificed for you. Jessica was nodding as if she were a judge. The kids are going to be devastated. They were already counting on a summer trip. I felt my head about to explode. The room was spinning a little like when you lack air. I grabbed my purse and walked toward the door. I'm leaving, I said quietly. Yes, sure, my mom screamed behind me. Run away from your responsibilities. I drove to my condo crying. My phone was already vibrating with messages and they continued all night. I turned off my cell phone and curled up into a ball in bed, exhausted and confused. Was I really being selfish? I just wanted 2 weeks for myself after years of paying for and carrying everything. The week after that meal was hell. I went to work, came back, and tried to ignore the bombardment. Every few minutes the screen lit up with a call or a message. First it was, what is wrong with you? Then, speak properly with your mom. And then pure guilt-tripping complaints. I stopped answering from the first day. That only made it worse. By Wednesday, Jessica had already brought in cousins and even my Aunt Carol. Your parents are devastated, my aunt texted me. Family vacations are their tradition. Why change now? It impressed me how fast they turned everything around. According to them, I was not an adult making a reasonable decision. I was a monster abandoning her family. The following Saturday, I decided not to go to the weekly lunch. I needed air, silence. I ordered takeout, poured a glass of wine, and was just settling in to watch a movie when the doorbell rang. Not once but several times. Insistent, as if someone were leaning on the button. I looked through the peephole and my stomach tightened. There were my parents and Jessica in the hallway. My dad with a red face, my mom with swollen eyes, Jessica with her arms crossed. For a second I thought about pretending I was not there, but my car was in the parking garage so they already knew. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Ah, so you are here," said my mom, walking in without waiting for an invitation. My dad and Jessica entered behind her. "I'm not hiding," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just needed to be alone." Jessica let out a dry laugh. "Well, you sure need a lot of alone time lately." They settled in my living room as if it were their house. My parents on the couch, Jessica standing by the window, pacing from one side to the other. I remained standing with my arms crossed. "Sarah," my mom started with a trembling voice, as if she were a serious victim. "You have caused us a great deal of emotional distress with your selfishness. The least you can do is pay for us to go where you are going. It is only fair after what you did to us. You can't leave us like this, as if we were people begging for charity." Jessica took a step forward. "No, Mom, not like that. Sarah, you can only fix this if you pay for everything. You know, Mom, Dad, David, the kids, and me." I opened my mouth and nothing came out. I stood looking at her as if I were hearing her for the first time. "And obviously," Jessica added, "with the best seats and the best rooms. None of that basic economy stuff. David has a bad back. He needs space." I stood with my mouth open. "Are you being serious?" "Of course," Jessica responded as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "It's the minimum." And there in that instant something settled inside me, as if a blindfold I had worn for years was removed. My family was not hurt because I wanted to be alone. They did not care about my exhaustion. It was not about the time together, it was about the money. I was their ATM, their travel fund, a credit card with a high limit but without a will of its own. So many years feeling guilty for wanting space, for hesitating before taking out my card, for dreaming of reading a book in front of the sea without someone asking me for something. And suddenly it was crystal clear. They were using me and had been doing it for years. "You know what?" I said slowly. "You're right." Their faces changed instantly. My mom's tears dried up. My dad stopped frowning. Jessica loosened her lips and a small unpleasant smile of triumph appeared. "I knew you were going to come to your senses," said my mom and touched my hand as if I had just won a prize. "You have always been a good daughter." Jessica was already taking out her phone. "Let me check dates to make sure. And Sarah, please book it better this time. No basic economy." I took a deep breath. I felt the anger boiling, but my voice came out calm, almost cold. "Don't worry. I've got everything covered. You just show up with your IDs and that's it. I'm going to organize an unforgettable trip." And the worst part is that they did not even ask for itineraries or for confirmations or for anything because they never did. It was always me who handled things, and they just arrived to enjoy. They left satisfied, believing they had won. When I closed the door, I stood in silence for a long time. I did not feel guilty for what I was about to do. On the contrary, I felt light, as if I had finally taken off a backpack that I didn't even know how heavy it was. The next morning I spoke with a real estate agent and found a condo on the other side of the city in Wicker Park. It was not huge, but it was well located and above all, it was mine. That same day I paid the security deposit, which hurt because a deposit in Chicago is no small thing, but I could do it because for the first time in years I was not paying for other people's vacations. In the following days, without making a fuss, I started moving my essential things to the new place. I updated my address with my bank and at work. I also set up the utilities for my new place and left everything else in order so I would not have to return. Meanwhile, my mom and Jessica were still excited about our trip, totally oblivious to what I was doing. My mom sent me photos of swimsuits. "Do you think this one fits me well for the beach?" Jessica sent me images of the kids' suitcases. "They are so excited." I responded with simple emojis or short replies like, "How nice," and "They're going to love it," as if I were acting in a play that they themselves had written. Every message confirmed that I was making the right decision. 2 days before the flight, Jessica called me. She did not even say hello. "Hey, just to check that everything is ready with the tickets and the hotel." "Everything is fine," I said. "Perfect. Then we'll see you on Friday at the airport. O'Hare, Terminal 3. Domestic departures at 9 in the morning." "Yes," I responded. There was a pause. Then Jessica lowered her voice as if she were going to say something profound. Sarah, I am glad that you finally understand what family means. It is important to support each other. I bit my tongue so as not to let out something that was burning inside me. And by the way, she added in a practical tone, I'm already thinking about the December trip. David and I saw a place in Aspen to go skiing. You'll cover that too, obviously. For Christmas, it would be incredible. I squeezed the phone tightly. I felt the pulse in my temples. We'll talk about that later, I said, watching every word. See you on Friday. She hung up before I could say anything else. They did not understand. They really did not understand. They kept believing they could decide over my life, my money, my vacations, as if I were a family resource and not a person. On Friday, I woke up at 5 in the morning. At that hour, the city is still moving, but not with the usual chaos. And I did not want to risk it. I already had a rideshare scheduled for 3 hours before the time I gave my family. I looked for the last time at my old condo, almost empty with just the basics. My chest tightened, a second of doubt. Am I doing the right thing? I am going to break ties forever. And then I remembered Jessica's voice talking about, obviously, you'll cover it, as if it were a law. I remembered my mom crying just to bend my will, my dad saying, you have to. Years of manipulation with a smile. Yes, I was doing the right thing. At the airport, everything was fast. I checked my luggage, passed through security, and walked to my gate. Boarding was around 8:30, and I was already seated much earlier with my heart pounding in my chest. No one stopped me, no one called my name, no one asked me for explanations. I sat by the window, nervous and excited, and when the plane took off, I imagined my family arriving hours later. I saw them in my head, standing with their suitcases, irritated because I was not there, calling me again and again, then approaching the check-in counter and hearing the phrase that was going to change their day. That there were no tickets in their names, that reservations for them didn't exist. The idea brought out a smile that I could not avoid while the plane rose among the clouds. We landed in the Keys. The air smelled of humid plants and salt. The hotel had a shuttle service. 40-something minutes later, I arrived at the place Jennifer had recommended. It was even prettier than in the photos. A small, elegant building without showing off, tucked between vegetation and a quiet bay. The room was simple, clean, with white sheets, wooden furniture, and a balcony overlooking the sea. I unpacked, put on a light dress, and went down to the beach. The sand was warm. The sea had a soft rhythm that settles the body. I sat there until the sun began to set and the sky was painted orange and pink. No one asked me for anything, no one demanded attention, no one complained to me about the wind, the heat, or the food. I did not have to take photos or carry bags or listen to complaints. It was just me, the sea, and the sky. It wasn't until nightfall that I remembered my phone. I turned it on and it exploded. I had 37 missed calls and more than 60 messages. All from my family. I started scrolling and saw the exact evolution, from confusion to panic and then to rage. My mom wrote, "We are already at Terminal 3. Where are you?" My dad wrote, "The airline says there are no tickets in our names. Call us now." Jessica wrote, "This isn't funny. The kids are already fed up." My mom wrote, "I can't believe you are doing this to us after everything." As the minutes passed, the messages got more aggressive. My dad called me ungrateful. My mom said I was no longer her daughter. Jessica was the worst. I am not going to repeat everything, but they were pure phrases full of venom, wishing me bad things and saying that I would get what I deserved. As if I had stolen something from them that was theirs. I should have felt guilt. And I tried, I swear. But what I felt was relief. There was their truth without makeup. They did not love me. They wanted what I gave them. I turned off the phone again. That night I had dinner at the hotel restaurant. Fresh fish, rice, a simple salad. I ate slowly, watching how the moonlight broke on the waves. This was how vacations were supposed to feel. Like that, the 2 weeks were exactly what I had dreamed. I swam in clear water. I walked to a hidden waterfall. I took a yoga class at sunrise in front of the sea. I read for hours under a palm tree without anyone interrupting me. I made friends with a retired couple from Austin and with a solo traveler from Vancouver. We had dinner together several times, told stories, laughed. And most importantly, there was no weird tension, no guilt, no bills. It was just hanging out as it should be, light. The last day I sat on the beach at sunrise and felt a peace that almost made me laugh. I was going to return to my work, to my life, to my new condo, but I was not going to return to being anyone's ATM. The return flight felt different. It was not just excitement anymore, it was a decision. I knew there would be consequences, but for the first time I felt ready. Upon arriving in Chicago, I took a taxi straight to my new condo in Wicker Park. It was still half empty with the essentials. That night I arranged boxes, made a list of things to buy, and fell asleep exhausted. I had barely fallen asleep when the phone rang. It was the manager of the building where my old condo was. "Miss Thompson, I apologize for the time, but there was an incident at your old unit. Someone vandalized the door and made quite a mess. We have already notified security and filed a report." I felt a chill. I did not need her to tell me more. "Check the security cameras," I told her. "I am almost sure who it was. My sister Jessica and her husband David are in their 40s. She has brown shoulder-length hair. He wears glasses. Security is already reviewing the footage," she answered. "Do you want me to provide them with your new contact information?" I gave her my new information, hung up, and sat on the bed with cold hands. That was no longer emotional blackmail, that was crossing a line. The next day I made decisions without thinking much. I changed my phone number, deactivated social media accounts that I hardly used anyway, and at work I asked to speak with the building security office. "I am going through some family problems," I explained, trying to sound calm. "If anyone comes asking for me, Laura or Robert Thompson, or my sister Jessica with her husband David, please do not grant them access and notify me." Several days passed without me knowing the status of the building's report. Then, almost 2 weeks later, an email from my cousin Megan arrived. "Sarah, I already heard about the Florida Keys. And I also heard that my Aunt Laura is going around saying that you tricked them and left them stranded as a cruel joke. I am telling you so you know what version they are telling. I also have to tell you something. Yesterday they identified Jessica and David from your old building's cameras. They were issued a fine and had to pay for the damages. Your parents are going around saying that they no longer consider you part of the family. I'm sorry things got so ugly. If you need anything, I am here. Sending you a hug." I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to feel something. Sadness. Anger, guilt. Nothing, not even anger. It was as if an old wound that had been infected for years had finally been cleaned out. It burned, yes, but it was the kind of burning that heals. My family had not seen me as a person for a long time. I was a resource, an ATM for their desires, a babysitter when it suited them, a credit card for their whims. And now that I stopped fulfilling that role, I was no longer useful to them. I made myself a tea and sat in my new armchair, still smelling like the store, thinking about everything that changed in so little time. 3 months ago, I did not imagine cutting ties with my immediate family like this. I lived trapped in guilt and obligation. I had even believed it was my job to keep them happy. The next day at work, my boss noticed the change. "You look different since you returned," she told me in our weekly meeting. "More focused, more confident." "Yes," I responded. "I made some difficult but necessary changes." She nodded. "It shows. And I actually wanted to speak with you. Next month a senior marketing position is opening up. I think you should apply." A month and a half earlier, I would have hesitated, thinking that it would take away time from attending to family demands. This time I smiled effortlessly. "I would love to," I said. That same afternoon Megan wrote to me again, asking if I wanted to grab coffee on the weekend. It gave me pleasure to know that not all family connections were broken. Megan had always been kind and sensible. She never asked me for money, never made me feel that affection was transactional. We met on Saturday morning at a coffee shop near my new condo. "You look good," she told me as soon as I sat down. She looked at me carefully. "Calmer." "I am," I admitted. "How bad is the gossip?" Megan made a face. "Bad. My Aunt Laura is saying that you promised them the trip, and then abandoned them at the airport out of cruelty. My Uncle Robert recounts all the times they supported you when you were a girl, and pretends that the years you supported them didn't exist." I took a deep breath. "And Jessica?" Megan stayed silent for a second. "Jessica is Jessica. They are furious about what they had to pay for the damages," Megan continued. They say you set them up and made them look bad. I let out a short laugh without humor. They went to damage my property and got recorded. How am I supposed to have staged that? I didn't say it made sense, Megan responded with a small smile. You know how they are. They never take responsibility. We talked for a good while. She told me about her son, about work, about normal things. When we were about to get up, Megan hesitated. Hey, they say they no longer consider you family, but I feel like they expect you to return. That one day you will feel lonely or need something and go ask for forgiveness. I stood thinking. I looked at my empty cup, then the window. If I don't return, I said, then I suppose we are going to see if that thing about them no longer considering me family was true. Megan squeezed my hand. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. What they were doing to you wasn't healthy. The following weeks took on a new rhythm. I threw myself into work. I prepared for the job interview and started building a life that did not revolve around my family's demands. My bank account grew without the constant drainage of, we have to support them. My weekends became mine. There were no longer mandatory meals where I arrived tense, watching my words so as not to provoke drama. I started making plans for pleasure, not out of commitment. Between interviews, weeks of waiting, and extra work, the news arrived. I got the promotion. I went out several times with Michael, an architect, and he turned out to be a kind, funny man. One of those who truly listens. I bought new furniture and painted a wall in my living room a soft blue that I always liked, the type of color my mom would have criticized immediately. By the end of November, Megan invited me to her son's birthday. I hesitated. I knew I could run into extended family there, and I did not feel like dealing with looks or whispers. Jessica and your parents aren't going to go, Megan assured me. Some cousins are going, and they've already heard both versions. Let everyone think what they want. First it was awkward. My cousin Ethan avoided looking at me. His wife whispered something to a friend while glancing at me sideways. But Aunt Carol hugged me with affection, as if she finally gave herself permission. And Uncle Philip acted as if nothing had happened, with that American ability to keep the gathering going even if there is tension. As the afternoon advanced, the atmosphere loosened up. People concentrated on the cake, on the kids running, on the photos, on the normal stuff. Life always ends up pushing through. When I was leaving, Aunt Carol pulled me aside. I should have said something years ago, she confessed in a low voice. What they were doing to you was not right. They took advantage of you. I felt a knot in my chest. Not of pain, more like recognition. Then why did no one say anything? She sighed. Family politics, fear of starting a fight, the usual excuses. I'm sorry, Sarah. I nodded. I accepted her apology without turning it into absolution. Have you heard from them? I asked. The truth is, they are struggling a bit without your help, she said, carefully but clearly. Of course, they will never admit it, and Jessica and David's business is doing badly again. They asked Ethan for money last month. I felt a spark of worry out of habit. Then I reminded myself of something that took me years to learn. They were adults. They made their decisions. Their problems were not my responsibility. That night, back in my condo, I thought about everything that had changed in less than a year. I went from being a walking ATM to living by my own rules. It was not easy. There were moments of mourning for the family I wished I had, not for the one I got. But there was also peace. It no longer gave me anxiety to check my bank account after seeing them. I no longer mentally prepared for vacations that were supposed to be for rest. I no longer walked carefully, as if any word could trigger a demand. The following week I received a Christmas card from Megan with a note hoping I would come to her end-of-year gathering. Michael asked me if I wanted to spend Christmas with his family. My book club organized a gift exchange for December. Life kept growing toward something healthier. One day I put Megan's card on a shelf in my living room, and I realized something that surprised me. I had not thought about my parents or Jessica in days. The sharp pain of their betrayal was no longer a daily knife. It was a memory that sometimes returned like a light blow and then went away. I no longer checked my phone with fear. I no longer rehearsed defenses in my head. I no longer wondered how to explain to them something they never wanted to understand. I was free, not only from their financial demands but from the emotional weight I carried for years. And in that peaceful silence of my condo, Surrounded by decisions that were finally mine, I understood something with a clarity that gave me calm. Family is not about blood or obligation. It is about respect, support, and love. Everything I tried to give them for years and everything they were never willing to give back. Comment. It is easy to believe that loving your family means saying yes to every demand, even when it hurts you. True generosity should never come at the expense of your mental health or financial stability. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is a necessary step to protect your peace and well-being. When you finally stand up for yourself, you quickly learn who respects you as a person and who only values what you can provide. Walking away from toxic patterns is incredibly difficult, especially when guilt has been used to control you for years. Still, the peace you find on the other side of that decision is worth every moment of temporary discomfort. Remember that family is built on mutual respect and support, not on obligation or manipulation. You deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate your success instead of draining your resources. Never be afraid to choose your own happiness, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I hope this story reminds you that your life belongs to you, and it is never too late to start living on your own terms. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.